Thanks everyone for joining this video. My name is Damien Margaritis, and today we're going to take you through lots of the Microsoft Ignite announcements specific to meetings and calling and devices. So lots of news that came out of Microsoft Ignite last week. I've spent the last week or so digesting what's come out, and we're going to go through that today. And with me today, I also have Megan Strant.
Hello, I'm Megan. I am a principal consultant in adoption and change management, also at InSync, and I work with Damien. And it is great to have this time to reflect and circle back together, particularly with our roles in the company, to look at some of these features and think about the impact they'll have on customers and the excitement and everything that's coming. So, Damien, meetings. Let's start with those. We watched a couple of sessions and we've shared them in a link as part of this video. Two sessions that stood out to us that both included a lot of detail about new features coming and also just some general stuff about meeting lifecycle and how you can work really well together. What were some of the things in that session that I guess stood out to you, things you're looking forward to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess one of the key takeaways this year has been around the kind of hybrid workplace, given what we've gone through with COVID and whatnot. But at the same time, Microsoft in these sessions has really called out that it's not just about meetings, right? There's more to the experience than just meetings. So one thing that really came out was, really concentrating on how Teams as a communications platform and a collaboration platform kind of put together into one. We'll talk about the kind of before, during, and after meeting experience, changing the way people meet, changing the way they think about meeting culture, all those types of things. So I think it's really good as well that it's not just about the tech. Right, we're not just talking about new devices and things like that, but we also need to talk about changing the way people behave. Right.
I think one thing that's key there as well is with some of the work we're doing with customers right now, Teams is, as you're right, Teams is a tool where it's click on a link. It starts with Outlook and they live in Outlook. They can create a link for a Teams meeting. They click, they join, they turn their camera off. That's the behavior we see. And a lot of people tolerate meetings because they don't use the tools to their advantage and they have frustrations and things. So I love this approach of all this stuff, hopefully driving people to get them to let go a little of Outlook and actually live more in Teams and get more out of it, and it be the whole life cycle, the coming together and the collaboration.
Yeah, and if you think about where we came from, the Skype for Business world, we didn't really have this. Well, we did. We had the concept of before, during, and after meeting, but we were in different applications. So, as you mentioned before, we'd be in Outlook, and we'd schedule a meeting. We'd jump over to Skype for Business, and we would have the meeting, and someone would press record, and it would record to their local desktop. And if they remembered, if we were lucky, they'd then take that recording and put it in a file repository somewhere for no one to ever watch ever again. And then after the meeting, we'd have some notes that we scribbled, or an email would get sent around to everybody. Or the best one, someone would take a photo of the whiteboard and apparently share it with people at some point, but that would never actually happen. So we had this really kind of disjointed experience, right? And everything didn't come together. And I think that's probably one of the most important things that Teams offers from a meetings perspective. If you get across, these new smarter ways to work, bringing together that before, during, and after meeting experience. And we're seeing some new features that are coming in to support that, like having the kind of meeting wash-up area where I see my transcripts and I can download the participants list, I can see all the attachments, I can see the whiteboard, etc. Everything's in one spot after the meeting as well. So Microsoft's been making some real improvements in that space.
I really love that. I got quite excited when I saw that stuff being demoed because you're right. And I mean, organizations I'm working with right now, things that surface are, where are the actions? Where are the notes? Meetings are not really that effective sometimes. So going back into my calendar and clicking on the meeting and having all those tabs for the whiteboard and the participants and the recording as like a one-stop shop place I go to. Because at the moment, you rely on the chat, meeting chat, you keep it there because the recording might appear, or it's like that's that only place you have. So yeah, this whole place of it coming together, I think, is going to be such a good move for people to learn. The one-stop shop, it's back in the calendar. Just go back to how it started and see all the stuff. Definitely.
Yeah. So maybe we talk through some of the new features that are actually landing and how that actually helps to support that new ways of working, new meeting experience. So maybe we start with some of the changes to the meeting options themselves. So some new capabilities that have been added that people might not know about are things like more control over who has to wait in the lobby and who is a presenter before a meeting starts. So in the past, before the latest round of updates, if you created a Teams meeting, the most granular control you had was that everybody in your organization would automatically be entered into a meeting space. Anyone that was part of your organization would join that meeting and they'd come straight in. They'd never wait in the lobby. But there might be times when you actually want to control that. I just want to be the presenter. I just want to be the only person that bypasses the lobby, and then I control when people come in. And I think this is even more important in education, right? So a teacher and a student are part of the same organization, but a teacher still wants more granular control over when those students can come in.
And if I can jump in there as well, my kids are remote learning right now, and there's a rule that if the teacher's not there at 10 minutes, everyone must leave the call. But they sit in a competing product call, all open, starting to muck about, seeing if a teacher turns up, if the teacher's late. So yeah, having that control and it being my kid be in a lobby and then at some stage we exit is much better experience, definitely.
Yeah, and extending on from that as well. So now there's also additional controls around who can unmute, right? And again, I think what's interesting is a lot of these features are developed out of the education space. So once you give these tools to environments like, the teaching environment, a classroom environment, all of a sudden it becomes very important to be able to administratively mute everybody and control when people can unmute themselves. But bringing that across into the business world as well, we've all been on meetings before where, you've got 50 or 60 people in a meeting, someone joins, they're unmuted, and there's rustling of papers, there's dogs barking in the background, and it really kind of takes away from the experience.
I think these meeting options, the way they're advancing, I think is really good. As I said earlier in the discussion, I'm finding a lot of people we support, they just click on a link, join a meeting, turn video off. There's really basic understanding out there of what meetings, how you participate and use features. So driving that there's meeting options and that you can have more control and really own and drive your meeting if you're the one that booked it. I think people just need to get across this so the quality improves, people engage better, and it's a better experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And on quality, right? Like we're seeing a lot of features as well that were announced that kind of really improve that end user experience as well. So not just back end changes that people don't see, but things that people can actually use. So we're seeing things like dynamic content and reactions coming to Microsoft Teams meetings. So the end user having a little bit more control over what they see, what they don't see, who they see on their screen, and also being able to see people react using reactions is another big one. So we've all been on, potentially some of us have been on Facebook video live feeds before and seen little, love hearts and thumbs up symbols come across. I don't need to unmute to give my sentiment. I don't need to look in a chat window as a presenter to track sentiment. I can actually see it on top of people's video feeds. So that's quite a nice new feature.
There was some great stuff at Ignite in some of these sessions and other ones around some of the challenges in our connection and the trust we build in relationships being remote and being 2D. So I do think some of the stuff, like even just a little love heart, people can't underestimate the positivity that can bring to a session. Instead of, you don't want to unmute and go, that was really great, I really agree. You're not sure if you want to add to the noise, but a simple click, I think, can boost people and bring positivity. So I really like these features.
Yeah, absolutely. And some others, not just on the attendee side, but on the presenter side, there's been some additional capabilities to really help with presenters as well. So we already talked about some of them around more control of the meeting, but also being able to bring some of the experiences and things like PowerPoint natively within Teams. So today, obviously a lot of us working remotely with COVID, we spend our lives doing PowerPoint presentations for customers or other internal meetings and things like that. And today I have my Teams client open on one part of my screen. I have PowerPoint open on another. I have a second screen where I show the PowerPoint presentation and share that screen because that's the easiest way for me to control the meeting. All of that is going to be possible inside the Teams client. So I'll be able to see my notes from within Teams when I'm actually presenting a PowerPoint. Some of the older Skype for Business type features are coming back. So being able to allow attendees to kind of hop forward and back in a PowerPoint presentation and then snap back to presenter view. So if I come in late and I miss something, or I want to go back and look at last year's FY numbers for a little bit longer, I can do that. So that's coming back. Yeah.
I have to say I'm a bit unsure about some of the features. So on the one hand, when we cannot click back and forth through slides, we're on the journey with the presenter and some people get bored. They're sitting there with each slide being read. I'm not sure if I want to present and have people click back and go, oh, Megan, can we just go back to that data again? It's part of me that thinks, is that going to be disruptive? But it can be really positive. And I do like the way the button where you go, you go back to where the presenter now is. So some of it's quite cool. I have to say also, together mode. So this was pushed quite heavily through Ignite, and I wasn't on the together mode bandwagon very much since it's been out as a feature. I wasn't sure if it was a bit silly. Wasn't sure if I saw the value. One thing that I've been noticing lately that was kind of reinforced through these sessions at Ignite was the research they've done into the work our brain has to do to sift through all the visual noise to see your face and your facial expressions. And me, to be honest, yesterday we had a big org-wide company meeting. I actually took 2 screenshots, one of the normal gallery mode and one of together mode, and everyone with their visual backdrops, and my eyes working to see everybody versus together mode being white behind and the faces. So I feel like last week I became a together mode. I converted, but it was just the reason they put behind it, I think, really helped with that feature to help people see the value of it.
Yeah, and I in one of the slides from Ignite, I think they actually showed they've done some studies and actually
the brain scan,
the brain scan of how much work we have to do when we're looking at that many video feeds at once. And it's one thing to keep asking for more and more video feeds to be on a screen. I think we're up to 49 with the larger view at the moment. That's a lot of information to take in, and as a human, I don't think we naturally kind of can take all of that in. I think even if we're talking to a large crowd of people, we tend to kind of pick out key people that we're kind of looking at for specific cues and their thoughts, etc. Being able to pin videos as well is useful if you want to just track that one person.
And Spotlight. Spotlight came into our tenant yesterday. It was the first time I noticed it, and that was really cool. So I think from an adoption perspective, there's some really great stuff there, but also we've got to get people to notice it and know how to use it, because pinning is great if they want to stay on a person. Sometimes when I'm training and I have a lot of people on video, there is actually I have a challenge where one person who's come at the front is disengaged and on their mobile, and that really brings me down a little. So I actually pin people who are engaged more.
Yeah.
Obviously, I also try to engage them, but so pinning can actually, I think, impact even your motivation and what's going on in a call and Spotlight. But we've got to get people understanding how it benefits them.
Yeah, I have noticed that because people have seen this new feature come into our tenant, and this happened to me on a call yesterday, a poly call that I was on, and people have seen the Spotlight feature come in, but they're not sure what it is yet, and they don't realize that it affects what everybody else sees as well. So they're kind of locking the Spotlight, and then everybody sees the same person, whereas with pin, it just affects you. So definitely one that needs to be handled with some kind of user awareness training, etc.
So one other thing that I noticed in the thing yesterday that's probably more in your area, packet loss recovery, given that I'm not technical.
Yeah, sure. So something that Microsoft's been working on for a while is something called the Saturn codec. So it is a new audio codec that Microsoft Teams is using. And without getting right down into the nitty gritty, essentially they've just figured out a way to make better use of the bandwidth and support low bandwidth situations. And even if I lose up to 50% packet loss, still have a good Teams experience. And I think this has become even more important in the COVID world when we've got so many people working remotely from households where they might not have the best internet connection. If I've got people in my corporate offices, I've got some control over the amount of bandwidth that my users have and whatnot. But unfortunately, in Australia at least, there's still plenty of pockets of places around Australia that do not have the greatest bandwidth available to them. So, and audio is always the most important. So when we think about media streams, there's audio, there's video, and there's content sharing. That's the 3 main types of media that we think about. Audio is the most important one to get right. If video is lagging a little bit or losing a few packets here or there, it's not so bad. But audio is the one that will really trigger people if they aren't getting a good audio stream.
So with all the discussion in these sessions about the life cycle, so that was one thing that I particularly loved was meetings, not just a meeting. The meeting experience goes across a number of ways. You've got the before, during, after. Can I ask, I guess, what are you most excited about, or what's something that you think is going to really help people drive more effective meetings?
What am I most excited about? I would say some of the new capabilities that are coming in around extensibility for meetings. So, and again, this is probably not one of the most obvious ones, but one that me as a technical person sees a lot of sees as being quite powerful moving forward, the ability to develop on top of the Microsoft Teams platform. So Microsoft's basically got APIs in place that will allow you to create applications that sit inside the Teams meeting experience and expand on the Teams meeting experience. So bringing, line of business applications into the Teams meeting, bringing customized polling or whatever it is into the Teams meeting. That one I see is quite exciting, but again, me being the techie guy, that's the stuff that tends to pique my interest.
I think mine's probably the meeting recap. So yeah, teaching people that there will be, you don't have to go find the recording and all of that. I think for me that stood out as that's really cool, is I just go back to the invite. Now, you're the calling guy. There's so much work that you do that with all the work that I do within our organization. Tell me about, and we've referenced 2 specific calling presentations in Ignite. Tell me what's coming with calling and some of the new things.
Yeah, sure. So the 2 sessions, advanced calling capabilities with Teams and Microsoft Teams calling made simple, covered off on a lot of new capabilities that are coming to Teams specific to calling. So the first announcement that was of a lot of interest was the new modern calls app that's being rolled out. So this is something that's been in tap for a little while. Basically, Microsoft have been looking at the existing calling app and have realized that they need to do a little bit of work to basically take advantage of all of that real estate, right? So again, if you come from the Skype for Business world, you might recall that we had this nice skinny little Skype for Business client. Teams is massive, right? There's so much real estate to play with, but with the old calls app, I still had to go in and I had to click a different menu to bring up my missed calls, a different menu to bring up my voicemail. There was no easy way to tell if, which device was selected or whether call forwarding was turned on or anything like that. So basically, they've developed a new calling app. So that new calling app, which sits in exactly the same place as the existing calling app, basically makes much better use of that screen real estate to support calling. Some other things that are definitely that are really, really positive as well is the ability to do things like dial by name from the number field. So anyone that came from the Skype for Business world would know that I could dial a phone number or type someone's name or search a directory all from the same box, right? Whereas Teams, I had to go to all these different boxes to, search for dial a number or search for a name. So that's all come together.
I think for us as well, we do a number of different projects, but a lot of our projects and our bread and butter is Skype first and foremost for years. But then, whether it be starting 2 years ago at whatever point, moving customers from Skype to Teams. And some of the projects, in my team, it's just, this is a calling project. The people in this project are going to want to know, how do I make calls tomorrow in this new app versus yesterday? And then when we take them into Teams, it's about what's harder. They really focus on calls. Some of the things were easier in Skype. You have to take them into Teams. They have to know, it's more about teaching them where things are. Where are your contacts? Where's your history? Where do you set up voicemail? So I think some of these changes will really help with adoption to streamline that, reminding and helping people know where to go as opposed to how to use it. Because once you get them there, they pick it up.
Yeah, and look, there's still some work to be done, right? So even with the new calls app, there's still some things that could be better that we had in the Skype for Business world. So for example, if I want to search my personal contacts, so people that are in my personal Outlook contacts list, I still have to go somewhere else. I still have to click on a different menu to look at my contacts, rather than just being able to type in that one box where I type for my phone numbers or search for people that are within my organization, right? So I think that needs to come into it as well, so it's a one-stop shop for when I want to communicate with somebody. We're definitely getting closer, but we're not quite there yet. But the new app is definitely a step in the right direction.
What about what did you find, and what are your thoughts on some of the collaborative calling and also the analytics type features in calling?
Yeah, absolutely. So collaborative calling is basically what Microsoft is. The term that Microsoft is using to refer to accessing a call queue from a Teams channel. So today in Teams Voice, I have the ability to create things like auto attendance and call queues that live in Office 365. But there's never been kind of a separate client experience or anything like that for an agent. Let's call them an agent that's a member of a call queue, right? So basically what I can be able to do now is associate a call queue with a channel. When I go into that channel, there is a calls tab. And when I look at that calls tab, I can see for the entire call queue, all the calls for that call queue. So not just calls to me, but calls that other people have answered that are a member of that call queue. So
That's
for
really
people
cool.
so for people that don't know what a call queue is, it's like a hunt group. It's like, what telephony systems have had for years, right? It's like a group of people whose phones will ring at the same time when there's a call to reception or a call to IT support. So I can now see all of the calls for everybody across the group. I can see voicemail, shared voicemail for that particular call queue. And something that Microsoft is calling the canvas down the right-hand side. Today, it will show me who's signed in, who's signed out, who's on a call. So I can actually see if people are, not signing into the IT service desk call queue and not answering calls. I can actually see that visibly.
I feel like there's a bit of accountability coming in here, because call queues and hunt groups right now, it pops up. I won't take it, someone else will get it. Whereas now, visibility and helping maybe the teams be a bit fairer. Who knows?
Yeah, and that canvas, that kind of right-hand sidebar, that today it shows all that information, but in the future it's going to show more. So expect to see reporting, analytics, etc. that pop up there. And just on that, on the auto attendant and call queue analytics, for anyone that's deployed Microsoft Teams and have these more advanced call flows, that's been something that's been missing for some time. So organizations, even if they don't want a full-blown contact center, a full-blown call center, still want to have some stats about calls coming into the business for reception and IT support or whatever else, sales, whatever it happens to be. So Microsoft's currently going through initial kind of beta phase of auto attendant and call queue analytics, where we're going to get historical reporting, agent detailed and summary call information will be available. And the first iteration will be Power BI templates that we can use to show that information, but expect to see that become a little bit more first class, see it appear within things like the collaborative calling area, or even maybe within the modern calls app itself.
Is there, what else, anything else on calling that you want to jump on before we move on to our third topic, kind of, which was the device stuff?
Look, the last big one to just touch on very quickly is the announcement that Microsoft will have a Microsoft Teams, what we call a Survivable branch appliance. So for anyone that came from, again, the Skype for Business or the Link worlds, there was this concept of having an appliance that sat in the perimeter of the network, say a branch office space. And if the WAN link went down to the Skype for Business or Link server environment, they could still make and receive phone calls. So today, Teams is obviously not on premises, it's in the cloud, right? If I can't sign into Teams, if there's an issue with my internet connection, I can't make phone calls, right? So this Survivable branch appliance that has existed for some time in the Link and Skype for Business days, and we thought was dead and gone and we'd never see it again, Microsoft's actually doing it with Teams. So we don't have a lot of details on it yet. It'll have a limited subset of features, so incoming and outgoing calls and call transfer. We'll wait and see what the other features are. And it's basically going to extend on the existing Teams offline mode that we already have. So for people that aren't aware, if I don't have an internet connection with Teams today, Teams doesn't sign out. I can actually still access stuff. I can still write messages. And when the client goes back online, it'll actually send those messages, extending on that so that I can make and receive phone calls if I have one of these appliances in my local branch office.
It's really good. So one thing that stood out to me across Ignite, I felt like the buzz term of the week, and I'm seeing it even in organizations really rapidly, is the hybrid workplace. And I actually had companies prior starting to talk about hybrid workplace. Let's just finish up, have a quick conversation around devices, because for myself, we both watched 2 sessions and there's some really cool stuff that Microsoft have out there. What are the things that you see that you think that are going to be really, really enable a much richer and efficient or valuable meeting experiences if added to an organization?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I think the first one, if we take into account the the COVID kind of world that we live in at the moment, there's a lot of focus on touchless experiences in meeting rooms, right? So when people go back to the office, how do we limit what people touch? We're seeing things like social distancing enforced with cameras that support people counting, which will actually be displayed on the Microsoft Teams room system device if you have one of that in a meeting room. And also the new category of devices that have come in, the panels, the Teams panels that go outside the meeting room, will be able to show that information as well. So before someone walks in, it'll actually say max occupancy, right? So I don't have to walk in and get yelled at and then walk out again. I can actually see it on the panel outside the door. Proximity join, which we're already doing today on Microsoft Teams room systems, so being able to join from my own personal device rather than touching a screen in the room. Voice assistance coming from powered by Cortana is coming. Personal remote control, so using my mobile phone to control the Teams meeting device, so I don't have to, again, touch the screen. And also Teams casting. So I'll be able to walk into a room and cast my screen to a room, even though I'm not in a meeting. I don't have to go in and plug a HDMI cable in or touch anything to do it.
I think something that I've seen across even quite a few years is some great devices are created and businesses buy them, but there's low adoption because if people don't go to those rooms regularly and touch and get to know the device, then they give up. It becomes a very expensive digital whiteboard. And people who are remote working are constantly frustrated and don't have you said something earlier about anyway, they're a second-class citizen. They have a worse experience. So I'm really keen to see if some of these new devices and in-room meeting room equipment can actually bring that whole collaboration experience to be much more valuable and richer and powerful. Just to wrap up, any other devices? So we saw some new intelligent peripherals and some collaboration bars and different things.
Yeah. So just very quickly, some new categories of devices coming as well. So intelligent peripherals for Microsoft Teams Room from EPOS and Yealink. If people haven't heard of EPOS before, that is what was Bose, or has split off from Bose. So being able to do things like intelligent transcription with speaker attribution for people in a room. So imagine in the not too distant future, we'll be able to enroll our voices in Teams in the back end in the Office 365 portal. And when I'm speaking in a meeting room, the attribution will actually attribute what I say to me in the transcript.
I really love this. Yeah, I love that you can jump in. I can miss a meeting and I can see Damien said this, Daryl said this, Richard said this, and it's a really, really valuable sort of capture of what was going on. It's great.
Yeah. And with continuing on with what else has changed with devices. So not too long ago, Microsoft introduced a new type of device, a collaboration bar, just to confuse everybody. So a new category of device that's actually been wrapped into the Microsoft Teams Room System portfolio now. So now we'll have Microsoft Teams Room Systems on Android or Microsoft Teams Room Systems on Windows. And Microsoft are adding a whole bunch of capabilities to what were the collaboration bar devices so that we get to feature parity essentially between the two types of devices. So I'm not at a disadvantage if I'm in a room with an Android MTR versus a Windows MTR.
Great. I think it's going to be interesting to see. There's going to be maybe some key decisions around spend for a lot of organizations. Maybe some of the new tech they could have shelved, but I think definitely they need to think about the hybrid workforce. A lot of people working remotely and maybe making some different decisions on spend here to make sure that no matter whether you're remote or in the office or where you are, everyone can have a bit of an equal experience and work really effectively. So I think that there was a lot of stuff. There's some really great things in here. Have a look at the sessions that we've touched on, that we watched. There's a lot of great things coming. Thank you so much, Damien. Really, really great detail. And it's really interesting to get across what's coming and what's possible.
No, thanks, Megan, as well. Look, I think we just scratched the surface. Definitely go and check out those sessions. There's a lot of stuff that we just didn't have the time to get around to. Lots of really interesting information across those 6 sessions, I believe, is what we went through.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.